Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome President, World Bank Group, Dr. Yong Kim.
Good morning, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to begin by thanking the Department of Commerce and Secretary Penny Pritzker. Also, I'd like to thank the Bloomberg Foundation and Michael Bloomberg for organizing this important discussion on powering Africa. As we've heard again and again, Africa's had 2 decades of very strong economic growth, but the encouraging growth story will only continue if the continent tackles its problem of infrastructure. Now, our studies show that the poor state of infrastructure in sub-Saharan Africa, including electricity, water, roads, and ICT, cuts countries' economic growth by 2 percentage points every year. And it reduces business productivity by as much as 40%. These losses take an enormous human toll in addition to taking a toll on economic growth. We've heard a lot about the infrastructure gap. There's about $100 billion a year that's needed. Less than half of that is supplied by the governments. And we've also heard that of the 800 million people in sub-Saharan Africa, there's only about 80 gigawatts of installed capacity, a deficit of 100 gigawatts. And, 600 million Africans, 10 million small and medium enterprises don't have access to energy, despite enormous potential for hydroelectric power, for geothermal, wind, and solar power. As Mr. Dangote said earlier, the 5.5% or so growth in Africa has been done without power. Just to give you a very specific example, I was recently in Burkina Faso, and President Compaoré told me, first of all, that they had been growing, and we knew this, they had been growing at about 6% a year, and the cost of energy was 75 cents a kilowatt hour. Here in Washington, D.C., we probably pay 10, 11, 12 cents a kilowatt hour. So what will we do? First of all, we think that the U.S. Power Africa initiative will play an extremely important role in achieving the goal of providing electricity for Africa. So today, I'm very pleased to announce that the World Bank Group, following President Obama's lead, will support Power Africa by committing $5 billion in direct financing, investment guarantees, in advisory services for project preparation in Power Africa's 6 initial partner countries. That's Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Liberia, Nigeria, and Tanzania. The U.S. government and the World Bank Group are working now on specific tasks and milestones for projects that, if implemented, would achieve 1/4 of Power Africa's goal of generating 10,000 megawatts of new power in sub-Saharan Africa. But while our financial and technical support will help move these projects forward, what we know is that we need much, much more funding. Now, the World Bank is a 70-year-old institution. We just had our 70th birthday in July. And we have done wonderful work in many African countries. But we knew, and I knew soon after I arrived at the World Bank Group, that we were not structured in a way to have the kind of impact that we knew we could have in tackling problems like power in sub-Saharan Africa. So we've rearranged everything. We've changed just about everything at the World Bank Group. We've increased our financial capacity. We're now able to provide state-of-the-art solutions, not just data and analysis, but solutions from all over the world. We're now a global knowledge organization as opposed to being a regional or country-based knowledge organization in the past, but we have to step up. I think you heard on a previous panel, Jeff Immelt said very clearly, what we need are pretty straightforward things. And so we will step forward and much more aggressively provide the kind of risk capital that will be needed to get projects moving. Secondly, we will use our 70 years of experience to take the lead on project preparation of what we know are many, many bankable projects in Africa. For me, having now had the chance to travel many times to Africa, and specifically as the World Bank Group president, I can't help but think about my own life, which started in 1959 in South Korea. I was born in a country that recently had gone through a war. It was one of the poorest countries in the world, with a GDP per capita at that time that was lower than Ghana's. And the economists at the World Bank stated that Korea was a basket case. Too Confucian, too uneducated, too agrarian to ever have any hope of developing. We have heard those same kind of pronouncements about Africa too many times. I think back just to 2000, when a small group of us began pointing to the problem of HIV in Africa, and we made the point that this is a problem that we can solve. This is a problem we can tackle. There were naysayers everywhere. It's impossible to treat HIV in Africa. Africa is going to have to wait for the next generation. But through the effort of people like George W. Bush, who launched the PEPFAR initiative, and many members of Congress here today who supported it, 10 million people in Africa are on treatment, and the treatment outcomes and the compliance is higher than in many cities in the United States. We should never, ever doubt the potential of Africa, not only to solve its problems, but to grow in a way that will boost up the entire world. You know, it was the developing countries during 2008 to 2013 that accounted for more than half of global growth. We at the World Bank Group believe in Africa. The next 5 panelists have all done things that show that they too believe in Africa. For the private sector representatives here today, I would just invite you, just as Donald Kaberuka just did, get to know us. Get to know us at the World Bank Group. We do political risk insurance. We do credit enhancement. We have direct equity investments. We have a private equity instrument called the Asset Management Corporation that will invest with you in Africa. The opportunities are enormous. Just imagine an investment in electricity in Burkina Faso that will not only provide you with very strong returns, but will reduce the price and increase the access to electricity for the people of Burkina Faso. We know we can do it. Together with all of you, we look forward to the next meeting of the United States government and African leaders, when we can talk about the great things that we've accomplished for our companies and on behalf of the people of Africa. Thank you very much.